Exposed. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 11. Reviving my friendship with Alice made me feel like something was right with my life, though. It gave me the boost I needed, the one that starting a relationship with Josh had failed to provide. I guessed that romance couldn't compare to the comfort of a true friend. She was someone I could trust and be myself with, and she accepted me the way I was. Within a short time, I felt as comfortable with her as if we had never been apart. I had already confided my secret rendezvous with Josh to her. The only thing I was holding back on was my shameful attraction to Mason, but I hardly even wanted to admit that to myself. She had given me a skeptical look when I told her about Josh. "Isn't he one of them?" I knew that "them" referred to Mason's crowd. "Yeah, but he's never been mean to me. He's actually a nice guy." "How nice can he be if he's going behind Mason's back with you? Did you tell him that you're not really dating Mason?" "Yes," I replied. "Oh," she responded. "That's different, I guess. But I still don't like it. What if Mason finds out? What do you think he'll do? He might show everyone your poem for spite. Isn't that what you're trying to avoid?" A strange thrill of fear and excitement shot through me at the thought of what he would do, and I took a shaky breath before speaking. "He won't find out. Josh knows to keep it a secret, and we're being careful. I'm not going to let Mason keep me from having this. He's not going to keep me from anything I want anymore. Not friends or dating or anything. Once he loses this bet, I'm done with him for good." "I hope so," she said with a sigh. "This whole situation is so messed up. How did he go from hating you to wanting you to be his girlfriend?" "He said it was reading my poems," I told her with an embarrassed laugh. "He took my notebook from my room and—" "He was in your room?" Alice exclaimed. "He was in your house? Was your mom there?" Yeah," I answered uneasily. "He invited himself to dinner and—" "What did he say to her?" she questioned urgently, interrupting me again. "Nothing," I replied. "He just introduced himself, and she didn't know who he was." "And he didn't tell her?" Alice asked in disbelief. I shook my head. "No." My stomach was in knots the whole time, waiting for him to confront her or say something about that picture. But he didn't. He was really pissed off, though, even though he didn't show it in front of them. "I thought you said he deleted the picture," she questioned me suspiciously. "He did, but I didn't know it. He was still using it to blackmail me. That's why I had to let him come over for dinner." The suspicion in her eyes deepened. "What else did he make you do?" I could see where her mind was at, and I shook my head emphatically. "Not that. He just made me wear a maid uniform and clean his house." Surprise flitted across her face, but she still looked like she didn't trust my answer. "You know it's not your fault if he blackmailed you into anything, so—" "He didn't." I interrupted her quickly as my face flushed with the knowledge that it had been entirely my fault, because I had kissed him first. Her eyes widened in horror as she stared at me. "Ella," she whispered. "No, it was just a kiss," I assured her. "That's all that happened, I swear." Relief broke through her horrified expression, but then was chased away by outrage. "He forced a kiss on you?" My gaze flitted away from hers as my blush deepened. "Oh," she responded, with the realization clear in her voice. "Not forced." After a moment's hesitation, during which I hoped she would just decide to drop the subject, she continued the conversation. "So, you still have a crush on him?" "No," I replied. "I was just caught up in the moment. He was wearing the tux, and it almost felt like we were at prom, and I forgot for a minute that he was Mason. That last part was an outright lie, because I hadn't for one instant forgotten that he was Mason. I couldn't admit that to her, though, because she would never understand how I could still be attracted to him. I couldn't even explain it to myself. "Oh," she said. "Yeah, I can see how that could happen. He is very good-looking, and if you just imagined him as some other gorgeous guy—" "Exactly," I agreed enthusiastically, eager to lay this subject to rest with a reasonable-sounding explanation. "So, anyway, I'm so glad that we can be friends again. We should make plans to do something. I'm free any day except this Friday." Her face fell. "Oh, was that your first kiss? Did he steal that from you?" Heat suffused my face, ruining my attempt to act nonchalant about it as I told her that it didn't matter. "Of course it matters," she insisted. "Oh, Ella," she sympathized with feeling. "I'm considering Josh my first kiss," I lied. "That's the one that counts." The truth was that it had already faded from my mind, and I couldn't recall it in the same detail as my kisses with Mason. That was because I'd only had one kiss with Josh, I assured myself. Once I surpassed the number of kisses I'd had with Mason, kissing Josh would be foremost in my mind. "Right," she agreed. "You take back control of your life and be with the guy you like." "Right," I echoed, and tried to ignore the nagging sense of disappointment I felt. It was the clothes, I told myself. That's what had made my kiss with Mason so memorable and special. And also the fact that it was my first kiss. I couldn't rewrite history, as much as I might want to. The thought that I wouldn't trade that amazing first kiss for the one with Josh flitted through my mind. But that was something that I didn't want to acknowledge. Josh is the right guy for me, I reaffirmed to myself. He's the one I want, not Mason. Yet my pulse automatically sped up when I got a text from him.
"Where are you? I brought you ice cream."
My excitement turned to alarm. "You're at my house?"
"Yes. I had to give your ice cream to your mom. It was starting to melt. Where are you?"
I couldn't imagine him there alone with my mom. What had that been like? "Are you still there?" My phone rang after I sent him that text, and I saw that he was calling me.
"Where are you?"
he demanded as soon as I answered. "A friend's house," I replied, as Alice watched me with interest. "Is that him?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," I answered her.
"Which friend?"
Mason questioned. "My friend," I retorted, "which means it's my business and not yours." Alice nodded at my assertion and gave me a thumbs up. There was a pause, during which I anticipated an angry reaction from him. Instead, he spoke in a silky tone that put me on edge.
"You're not being very considerate of my feelings, Ella. I introduced you to my friends, but you don't want me to know yours. Do you think that's fair? Is that something that a good girlfriend does?"
"Fine," I relented, realizing that I had made the criteria of what constituted a good girlfriend or boyfriend too broad. I knew that he wouldn't hesitate to exploit that blunder on my part in order to win the bet. "It's Alice. She was my best friend before you ruined that for me," I added, letting the resentment be heard in my voice. There was another pause.
"I'm sorry,"
he said. "You should be," I stated.
"I am,"
he confirmed and expelled a breath.
"I really am, Ella. Even spending just 5 minutes with your mom, it's so obvious that you're nothing like her. I shouldn't have assumed that you were, because I'm nothing like—"
He cut off abruptly, but I could guess what he was going to say. That he was nothing like his dad. I held a different opinion on that. but it wasn't as firmly entrenched in my mind as before, and that worried me even more than my attraction to him. I was starting to think that he really wasn't such a bad guy, and that was dangerous thinking. I would have to be a complete fool to ever trust him.
"So that's the girl that was Chase's secret girlfriend,"
he said.
"Alice."
I mentally cursed his ability to remember things so well and chided myself for letting her name slip out during that conversation. I would have to watch what I said around him from now on. "Yeah," I acknowledged and hurried on. "So I'm here to see her, not talk on the phone with you. So, bye." I hung up before he could respond. "Sorry," I said to Alice. "What'd he say?" she asked. "He wanted to know who you were with?" "Yeah, but I promise he won't bother you again," I told her. "It won't be like last time." "I think you're right," she said, surprising me. "Oh," I responded in relief, glad that she was no longer wary about continuing our friendship. "I think he would only have a problem with me if I was a guy," she remarked. "He sounds possessive and jealous, Ella. You better believe he thinks you're really his girlfriend. You better break up with him before you start dating Josh." "I can't," I replied. "I have to get my poem back first." "What did you write in this poem?" she questioned in bewilderment. "How bad could it be?" I looked away from her as I blushed in embarrassment. "Okay," she sighed. "Just promise me that you'll call the police if he threatens you. Or call me if you're afraid and I'll call them for you. We can have a code word if you want, something that he won't suspect." I had returned my gaze to her as she spoke, and I emphatically shook my head. "He's not abusive. I know that much about him." "He might be when he loses his temper," she argued. "No," I stated. "He gets cold and distant. The more pissed off he gets, the more he pulls back." She studied me intently. "So you're hoping to make him mad enough to break up with you?" I hadn't considered that possibility, but he certainly did have a tendency to freeze girls out when he was done with them. He hadn't spared Addison another glance after he dropped her, and Brooke had transferred to another school after he gave her the cold shoulder. I wondered if I should try annoying him and getting on his nerves. "That's brilliant!" I exclaimed. "I can overdo the enthusiastic girlfriend thing and annoy the crap out of him. What should I call him? Honey? Sweetie Pie? Pookie Bear? Yes, that's it. He'll hate that." Alice giggled, and the sound gave me the warm fuzzies. I hadn't giggled over silly stuff with anyone in ages. "I would love to see the look on his face if you called him that," she said. "Oh, I will," I proclaimed. "And I've got to think of more things to do to annoy him. But it has to be stuff that a girlfriend would do. Maybe like nag him or something." "You could do the whiny voice," Alice suggested. "But Pookie Bear," she whined an example. I giggled in response. "That's perfect. Too bad I'm going to the Taylor Swift concert with Erin, or I could have whined for him to take me." The smile slid off Alice's face. "You're going to a concert with Erin Michaels?" "Yeah," I confirmed awkwardly. "She had an extra ticket and she asked me to go. It's really last minute, so I didn't have a chance to ask you. It's probably sold out since it's this Friday." "No, I wasn't. No, that's fine. Erin's nice." "Yeah," I agreed. "But I'd rather be going with you. We should make plans to do something. We need to make up for lost time." "We will," she told me. "But we don't need to make any special plans to do that. We can talk every day again, even at school, and sit together at lunch." "Yes," I agreed with growing excitement. "And you can come over my house, and we can even sit together on the bus now." We beamed at each other, and just like that, it felt like we were back to what we had before. "Senior year!" we exclaimed simultaneously, both of us apparently having the giddy realization that we would be able to spend it together. Addison had made the last school year more tolerable than the previous two, but I hadn't felt this sense of connection to her and the surety that I had a real friend who I could be myself with and bask in her total acceptance. It occurred to me that this was what Mason was lacking in his friendships, and that was why he felt like he didn't have any real friends. Alice threw her arms around me in a spontaneous hug, and I pushed Mason out of my thoughts as I hugged her back. "You're the best," I gushed. "You'll always be my best friend." "You'll always be my best friend too, Ella," she said, as she pulled back to look at me. "It's just not the same with my other friends. Nobody else knows me as well as you do." That prompted me to bring up the subject I hadn't been sure how to broach, but she hurried past the moment by suddenly declaring that we should go to Six Flags on Saturday. "It'll be so much fun to spend the whole day there together." "Good idea," I exclaimed excitedly. "I haven't been there in years, not since the last time I went with you. I can't wait." It was the perfect thing for us to do to bridge the gap between then and now. It held the carefree memories of early adolescence, and we would naturally loosen up as we had fun. We could talk over the course of the day about anything that came to mind and dissipate any lingering hesitation or self-consciousness between us. I left her house feeling happy, and I wanted to share that feeling. So, I called Zoe to invite her out for ice cream with me. I drove to the apartment building where she lived and picked her up. She dropped the unaffected tough girl act when she got in my car, and protectiveness surged up within me at the sight of her innocent smile. She was still a kid, happy to get a simple treat, and seeing her happy warmed my heart. I did feel like she was my little sister, and I often wished that she lived with me so that I could keep an eye on her every day. Logically, I knew that there was no guarantee that I could keep her safe, but I still had the illusion in my mind that I could protect her. I knew better than to hug her in the parking lot of her apartment building, so I waited until we arrived at the ice cream shop. She had long since stopped pretending that she was reluctantly indulging me, and she hugged me back without rolling her eyes at me afterwards. "Boy, have I missed you," I declared. "How have you been?" "You just saw me last week," she retorted. I was startled to realize that it had been such a short time. "Yeah, well, it feels longer. A lot has happened." She focused her attention on me more intently. "Like what?" she questioned curiously. Realizing my mistake in blurting that out, I tried to backtrack. "Oh, just starting school and stuff," I said, as I opened my door to escape her scrutiny. Regrouping, I turned the focus on her when she joined me in exiting the car. "That reminds me, how is your first week going? I still can't believe you're in high school now." "What happened?" she demanded. "Did that asshole start more shit?" "Language," I admonished her automatically, as was my futile habit with her. I felt it was my sisterly duty to try to curb her of her swearing and to watch my own language around her. She ignored my protests, but I had noticed that she didn't swear in front of her mom, so I knew the lady would want me to continue my effort. Zoe wouldn't let up. "What the fuck did he do?" I halted in front of the door to the ice cream shop. "Nothing," I said, before turning to look at her. "Watch your language. There are little kids in there." Her gaze narrowed on me. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" I was regretting ever mentioning Mason to her at all, but I had shared my own story of being bullied so that she would open up to me too. It had worked, and she had told me about what had happened to her. Besides her age, that was another reason that I avoided topics with her that involved anything sexual. I certainly wasn't going to tell her about Mason taking a naked picture of me. "There's nothing to tell," I stated, as I pulled the door open and held it for her to enter the cool interior of the ice cream shop. She gave me a look that clearly conveyed that she wasn't buying my bullshit, but she let it go, and allowed herself to become distracted by the goodies awaiting her at the counter. After we ordered, I pulled my wallet out of my purse to get out the money to pay.
"I've got it."
A male voice spoke from behind me. As I froze in shock and dread, he brushed against me as he moved up beside me to hand the cashier money. I glanced at Mason before my gaze shot toward Zoe in panic. She didn't even notice me because her attention was riveted on him. It was disconcerting to see the look of female appreciation for an attractive male on her young face, and my head turned away only to be confronted by the sight of Mason watching me.
"I knew you wanted some,"
he said, and smirked before adding,
"Ice cream."
I was beyond sexual innuendos at this point, though, and my flushed skin was a result of my extreme nervousness over trying to prevent Zoe from finding out about us. Thanks, sir," I said, as my eyes pleaded with him not to say anything. "That's very nice of you." I stepped sideways and gave Zoe a little push to move further along the counter to wait for our ice cream. To my distress, Mason joined us like we were together.
"You don't have to call me sir anymore,"
he told me before turning his attention on Zoe.
"Hi, I'm Mason, and you must be Zoe. I couldn't wait to meet you after Ella told me about you."
She came out of her besotted trance as her eyes widened in shock before her gaze shifted to me. "That's Mason?"
"She's talked about me to you?"
he inquired, sounding pleased. Her gaze shot back to him in sudden fury. "You piece of shit asshole! You get the fuck away from her!" Mason looked startled by her vehement outburst as the guy at the counter spoke awkwardly.
Here's your strawberry sundae. Your banana split will be right up."
Zoe snatched the sundae out of his hand and flung it at Mason. It hit him in the chest and made a mess all over his shirt.
You're gonna have to leave,"
the guy at the counter said. Mason stopped staring at Zoe and turned to speak to the guy.
"It's fine. Could you get them another strawberry sundae?"
He pulled out more money out of his wallet and placed it on the counter.
"Keep the change."
Pulling his t-shirt up off his abs to catch the ice cream dripping down from his chest, he faced Zoe.
"I'm sorry you have the wrong impression of me, but I hope you'll give me a chance to change that, just like Ella did. Especially since I'm her boyfriend now."
Zoe gaped at him in utter shock as he walked quickly toward the restrooms. My face was on fire with the heat of my humiliation, and I wasn't prepared to deal with her incredulous scrutiny. "It's true?" she accused. The guy at the counter announced our banana split, and I turned toward him like a drowning person seeking a life raft. I handed the ice cream to her without looking at her. "Get us a table." She didn't reply, but she disappeared from my peripheral vision. When the guy brought me my ice cream sundae, I couldn't put off facing Zoe any longer. Turning and spotting the table she was seated at, I slowly started walking toward her. She glanced up at me as I set my ice cream down, but my attention was caught by the sight several feet behind her.
"Hey,"
the frazzled guy who had served us our ice cream protested.
"You can't be in here without a shirt." "I know,"
Mason replied.
"I'm leaving, but I had to rinse my shirt off first."
He held up the wet fabric he had bunched in his hand.
"Hey, Ella,"
he said, as he came near and smirked at me as my gaze shot up from his bare stomach to his face.
"I'll pick you up for school in the morning."
Before I could recover my wits to protest, he was striding out the door, and I became distracted by the sexy sight of the tan skin of his back beneath the sun. "Fuck, he's hot," Zoe said. "You didn't tell me he looked like that." I closed my eyes in mortification as I braced myself to face her. My lowered gaze fixed first on the chair I was pulling at, and I sat down before forcing myself to look at her. I began, and trailed off without a clue of what to say to her. Yeah, she agreed, like I had said something. Wow, okay, so that's happening. I can see why. I flushed. No, it's not. He's not really my boyfriend. So it's just sex, she stated matter-of-factly. I emitted an embarrassing squeak as my face overheated. No, we're not. No, that would never happen. Why would you think that? Probably because you were looking at him like that, she replied. I was not, I protested. It's okay, she assured me. He was looking at you like that, too. I hastily grabbed a spoonful of ice cream in an attempt to cool down and regain my composure. It prompted Zoe to begin eating her ice cream, too, so it worked as a momentary distraction to give me a reprieve from the conversation. I used the opportunity to change the subject. So I'm going to a concert on Friday. With Mason? She asked. No, I answered flatly, before forcing a bright smile. With my new friend Erin. She had an extra ticket, and she asked me to go. It's Taylor Swift. Zoe studied me steadily. Why are you being so fake? I'm not, I denied in dismay. I like Taylor Swift, and I'm excited about seeing her in concert. Maybe, she allowed. But you were being fake happy. Is it because you don't want to tell me how you got with Mason? I sighed. I'm not with him, honestly. He thinks I am, but I'm not. I leaned toward her conspiratorially. I actually have a secret boyfriend. His name is Josh. Her brown eyes widened in surprise. You do? When did that happen? Why didn't you tell me that before? Because we just started dating today, I answered. What about you and Mason? She questioned. Why does he think he's your boyfriend? And how did that happen anyway? When did he stop being an asshole to you? I don't know, I lied. He just apologized out of the blue, and now he thinks that I'll forgive him and go out with him, but I won't. He apologized, she repeated in astonishment. And nobody made him? No, I replied. But that can't make up for what he did. Saying he's sorry doesn't change anything. She contemplated that thoughtfully as she ate her ice cream. I again tried to engage her in conversation that didn't involve Mason. So, tell me how you like high school. How's it going so far? Good, she answered absently, before continuing with the topic on her mind. Saying he's sorry when he doesn't have to. Well, that's something. And he didn't get mad at me for throwing ice cream on him. He was even nice to me. He better be nice to you or I'll kick his ass, I responded on instinct, protectiveness rising up in me immediately. She smiled at me, and happiness surged up within me. Her smiles always lifted my spirits and made me happy, no matter how down I was feeling. Her resilience was an inspiration to me, but it was more than that. I had grown to love her while spending time with her, and I had real sisterly feelings for her. Hey, do you want to go to Six Flags on Saturday? I asked on impulse. She beamed at me. Yes. I suddenly felt bad for not thinking of offering to take her before. Of course, a kid would want to go to an amusement park, but I'd only taken her to the fair, which had less rides than Six Flags. She'd had lots of fun anyway, and seeing her carefree enjoyment had inspired that poem about her. I had taken her back to the fair the following summer, but it hadn't occurred to me to take her to a place with bigger, more thrilling rides. She obviously wanted to go, but she wasn't like the kids I babysat, who voiced their wants. Zoe accepted what I offered her, but she had never once asked me for anything, even though she had a lot less than the spoiled kids I got paid to watch. That made me want to give her things, but I realized that there was another person involved this time, and I hadn't consulted her. I forged on ahead anyway. Do you have a friend you could bring along? My friend Alice is going with us, so it would be good to have another person to go on rides with. Alice? she inquired with a puzzled expression. I thought Addison was your only friend. I couldn't hide my reaction to her name, and Zoe responded to the expression on my face with an exclamation. Whoa, what did she do? I shook my head. It doesn't matter. I just found out that she wasn't really my friend, so that's that. Anyway, Alice was my best friend in middle school, and we're friends again now. She's really nice. I think you'll like her. I've never met any of your friends before, she said in a tentative tone that was unlike her. I thought maybe… What? I prompted after she trailed off. She shook her head as if to dispel the thoughts in it. Nothing. So, Alice is okay with me going with you? Yes, I answered confidently, even though I hadn't run it by her yet. But do you have anyone you could bring? It's okay if you don't, I hurried to assure her. Well, she began, and dropped her gaze as she swirled her spoon around in the thin layer of melted ice cream at the bottom of the plastic container. There's someone I can ask. Okay, good, I said, and stood up. I should get you home now that I've spoiled your dinner. I'd rather eat ice cream for dinner anyway, and for breakfast and lunch, she added, as we threw away our trash. You'd get sick of it if you had it all the time, I told her. No, she disagreed. Some things are too good to ever get sick of. A memory of how it felt to kiss Mason flashed in my mind, and I berated myself for tainting her innocent words with my inappropriate thoughts. This thing with him was encroaching on too much of my life. At least before, he had been just an annoyance at school, and only in my secret thoughts when I was alone at home. Now he was everywhere, coming over to my house, calling me on the phone while I was with Alice, showing up here to disrupt my time with Zoe. It had to stop. I told him so when he called me that evening, even though hearing his voice made me want to see him. How did you know where I was today? I demanded. I didn't tell anyone I was going out for ice cream with Zoe, so how did you know?
I followed you to Alice's house, he replied.
I was taken aback by that answer. But you didn't know I was at her house until I told you.
But I went there after you told me.
I didn't see you there, I protested.
I parked down the street and waited for you to leave,
he informed me. But how did you even know where she lives? I questioned in dismay.
I found out everything I could about you when I moved here. Who your friends were, where they lived. You spent the most time at Alice's house, so I still remembered her address.
Do you have a photographic memory or something? I complained.
Not photographic, but it's pretty easy for me to remember things when I set my mind to it.
Great, I muttered. The asshole gets beauty and brains. I instantly regretted letting those words slip out and braced myself for his smug reply. He surprised me when he spoke, though.
Except for the asshole part. You could be talking about yourself, Ella. It pissed me off when I found out that you were smart. I expected you to be a brainless bimbo getting D's and F's, and on your way to dropping out of school. I couldn't believe it when I saw you had mostly A's.
I had to study like crazy for those A's, but wait, how the hell do you know what grades I got?
You being on the honor roll was my first clue, and then I paid someone to show me your school records,
he admitted. I can't believe they'd do that, I exclaimed in outrage. That is so wrong.
What are you upset about? You have a record to be proud of.
That's not the point, I railed. They violated my privacy. They should be fired. Who was it?
You know I'm not going to tell you that,
he said, like he was speaking to an unreasonable child. You're an asshole, I yelled at him in frustration. Just stay out of my life and leave me the hell alone. Don't fucking follow me either. I don't want you around my friends.
I like Zoe,
he told me.
I like how she defended you. She's braver than most guys I've met. I respect that.
I couldn't help warming toward him over his praise of her. She's amazing, I gushed. So resilient after everything she's been through. I would have been afraid of every guy I met. I stopped in horror at having revealed too much. I never spoke about what she had confided in me to anyone. Mason's voice was tight and terse.
Who hurt her?
I shouldn't have said anything, I told him regretfully. Please don't say anything to her about it.
I need a name,
he snapped. That's when I realized that he meant to take some kind of revenge on the man who hurt Zoe, and my heart swelled with feeling for him. Mason, I said, with more warmth than I ever could have imagined speaking his name. You're not really in the mafia.
I don't need the mafia, he retorted. I'll get that fucking asshole myself. What the fuck did he do to her?
His voice shook with rage.
Did he rape that little girl?
He tried to, I answered. Luckily, her mom got home early that day and stopped him. He went to jail, Mason, so you don't need to do anything. Just please don't ever tell Zoe that I told you about it. She confided that to me in secret. I can't believe I said anything, I added in self-reproach. I've never told that to anyone.
You can tell me anything, he declared. I've got your back, Ella.
It felt strangely true, and I didn't know what to do with that feeling. Thanks. I should go.
Wait. I wanted to ask you out on a date this weekend. I know you're going to the concert with Aaron on Friday, so how about Saturday?
I'm going to Six Flags on Saturday with Alice and Zoe, I replied.
Oh,
he responded. It's girl bonding time, I said, feeling oddly compelled to explain why I wasn't inviting him along.
Right, but, won't someone be left without a partner for rides?
Zoe is bringing a friend, I informed him, trying to shake the feeling that I was leaving him out.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense. That way you can ride with Alice.
Yeah. Girl time, I repeated, forgoing the opportunity to voice my resentment again over how much time I had lost with Alice because of him. He mentioned it himself, however.
I'm glad you're friends again. I'm sorry I kept her from you.
I couldn't tell him that it was okay, because it wasn't. Yet I didn't feel like refusing his apology either. I know, I said in acknowledgement. This unprecedented moment between us was too disconcerting for me, and I retreated from it after a pause that felt like a prelude to something. Well, I have to go. Bye, I threw out hastily, before ending the call. I received a text from him a moment later.
Good night, Ella. I'll see you in the morning.
I didn't respond, but I also didn't delete his text. I hadn't deleted any of his previous ones either, and I didn't know what I was saving them for. Setting my phone down, I walked restlessly around my room. I was in a strange mood, and I couldn't pinpoint exactly how I was feeling. Maybe I was just overwhelmed by how much I had going on all of a sudden. Yes, that had to be what was stirring me up this way and making me feel almost like I couldn't quite catch my breath. I decided that I just needed some rest, but sleep eluded me for much of the night. Yet I wasn't tired when I awoke to the sound of my alarm clock. I sprang out of bed with a buzz like I'd already had a cup of coffee. That turned out to be my breakfast, because I found that I wasn't hungry. I brushed my teeth and got dressed in an effervescent state of anticipation I hadn't felt in ages. I was actually looking forward to the day. When Mason arrived, I practically bounced out to his car. He had gotten out and stood waiting for me with his hands in his pockets and a neutral expression on his face. I beamed a smile at him, and his posture relaxed as he responded with an answering smile. Warmth radiated through me to combine with the buzz in my veins, and I felt the high of happiness.
Hey,
he greeted me as he approached me and stood looking at me like he wanted to say more. Hey, I replied, and gazed back at him. He was the first one to rouse himself out of the trance we had fallen into.
So,
He moved to my side and took my hand to walk me the short distance to his car, and it gave me an extra surge of happiness to hold his hand. My state of euphoria only increased during the ride to school when he started singing along to the song playing on the radio. I joined him when he put on Believer, and we belted out the lyrics together. He put the radio back on after that, but I took control of it and sampled through the stations until I squealed in delight when I hit upon Taylor Swift's Shake It Off. It was only a short way into the song, and I started singing along and adding as many sassy moves as I could while seated in a car. Mason kept glancing over at me with a permanent smile on his face. When we arrived at school, we sat there grinning at each other after he parked the car. A knock on his window shattered the perfect bubble we were in as the sight of Tyler's face brought me back to reality with a shock of recognition. The idiot outside was part of the crowd that had treated me like crap, and Mason was their leader, and I had been sitting here feeling happy with him. The realization hit me then that I had been excited to see Mason this morning, and it hadn't had anything to do with sex. I had actually smiled at him. Seeing him had made me happy. Mason, my tormentor, my enemy, my blackmailer. That's why I'd been happy to see. The sexual attraction had been twisted enough, but this was on a whole other level of unhinged. The sudden clarity brought the urge to flee, and I threw open the door and left it like that as I dashed away. I heard Mason calling my name, but I didn't look back. This insanity had to stop.